Hello, and welcome back, my dear listener. Come closer, settle in. Tonight, we're not just chasing history. We're letting it wrap around us like the softest woolen blanket. The world outside, with its endless noise and urgent demands, can wait. Just for this precious moment, let your shoulders drop, let the tension drain from your jaw, and let your mind feel the gentle tug of rest. Our journey tonight is not across a vibrant sea or through a crowded royal court, but into a silence so deep it speaks volumes, the silence of the great desert, resting at a dusty Silk Road caravan oasis. Feel the phantom heat on your skin, a memory of the relentless sun, even as the cool air of this imagined evening begins to caress your face. You are utterly spent. Every muscle aches with the memory of endless shifting sand. The air you breathe is dry, tasting of ancient dust and a faint, miraculous sweetness, the promise of water. You are a single weary traveler, perhaps bearing little more than curiosity and persistence, and you are finally here at the threshold of life amidst the desolation. You probably won't survive the next week if you don't take this moment to truly, deeply replenish. The sheer scale of the journey is cruel, but the small flickering lamplight ahead is the kindest sight you have ever witnessed. You have trudged through days where the horizon seemed to recede just as you approached it, days where the sand swallowed your footprints before you could even finish lifting your foot. Now the rough, reassuring scent of dung and wet earth rises to meet you, a symphony of survival. The towering protective walls of the khan, the traditional rest house, seem to sigh a welcome. The gate is wide, open like the benevolent arms of an old friend, and you stumble past the threshold, onto packed, firm ground. The relief is immediate, physical, a wave of blissful non-resistance washing over your body. You find yourself in a large, open courtyard, surrounded by the sturdy two-story structure of the inn. Camels, magnificent, stoic creatures of the desert, are already kneeling, their enormous forms settled into quiet rest, chewing their cud with slow, rhythmic movements, their long necks swaying slightly. You see the deep, intelligent creases around their eyes, already half closed in contentment. You look for a corner, a place that seems to belong only to exhaustion, and you find it, a relatively clean patch of straw-matted ground near a wall, sheltered from the faint, cool breeze that carries the scent of cooking spices. Slowly, deliberately, you peel the heavy, dust-caked cloth from your head and shoulders, feeling the sting of sweat evaporating instantly in the arid air. You let your pack slide to the ground with a soft thud. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated surrender. The setting sun has painted the few clouds overhead in bruised purples and vivid oranges, but even this spectacular drama fails to fully capture your attention. Your focus is inward, on the glorious, sinking sensation of stillness. The courtyard is a gentle hum of activity, a tapestry woven from the sounds of travel. There is the clink of metal against stone, the soft, liquid sound of water pouring into a trough, the low, multilingual murmuring of travelers exchanging brief, exhausted pleasantries. You don't need to speak their language. The shared language of survival and relief is understood perfectly. The world has narrowed down to this small, sheltered square of earth, and you are simply breathing. You watch the stars begin to prick the deep violet sky above the open courtyard, a reassuring canopy that has guided caravans for millennia. The sheer, overwhelming silence of the desert seems to be held at bay by the thick walls and the presence of so many other resting lives. The Khan is not just a building, it is a temporary world, a small breathing capsule of humanity crossing the void. You are safe. You are held. You are finally, beautifully still. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and let me know how your day has really been. Your worries, your exhaustion, or even a tiny joy that made you smile. I'm here to truly listen and offer the most sincere, heartfelt advice I can. Now, turn off the lights, take a deep, slow breath, let your tiredness melt away, and gently close your eyes. Let's drift together into tonight's dreamlike lands. And tomorrow morning, if you still remember, send me a message and tell me what you dreamed. The profound, delicious stillness of your initial rest starts to give way to a gentle, contemplative awareness of your surroundings. You are settled, the immediate thirst and physical pain muted by the sheer relief of stopping, and now you can truly hear the courtyard's nightly rhythm. It is a slow, methodical beat, the pulse of a place designed for temporary shelter and deep recovery. The activity here is not frantic, but purposeful, governed by the ancient, unspoken rules of shared necessity. You notice the care with which merchants are attending to their beasts, a quiet ritual of brushing, watering, and feeding. The camels, these magnificent, slightly aloof carriers of civilization, are pampered not just for necessity, but out of a deep respect for their extraordinary endurance. You watch as a young man from a group speaking a language you don't recognize runs a soft cloth over the glossy flanks of his favorite camel, a gesture of profound affection and gratitude. This rhythm dictates that noise must be kept low, movements deliberate. There is no loud laughter, no shouting, only the low, continuous drone of different tongues, blending into a soothing, unintelligible hum. It is a shared understanding that this space is a sanctuary, and the most precious commodity here, besides water, is undisturbed rest. You find yourself observing the customs, the subtle etiquette of the weary. No one jostles, no one rushes past another's sleeping space. When someone needs to pass, they do so with a small, apologetic stoop, eyes downcast, moving like a shadow against the flickering oil lamps. The light, incidentally, is provided mainly by these lamps, strategically placed near the stable areas and the central well, casting long, dancing shadows that soften the harsh lines of the stone walls. The darkness is respected, almost revered, as the natural cloak for sleep. You see a family, perhaps pilgrims rather than merchants, spreading out thin mats, preparing their children for the night. The mother moves with an economy of motion that speaks of years of journeying, tucking the small bodies in with a quiet, efficient grace. The children, amazingly, offer no protest. They simply accept the setting and the silence as the natural conclusion to their long day. This community, temporary and constantly shifting, enforces its own form of gentle discipline. You notice a small fire, carefully contained in a low stone hearth in a sheltered area, used not for cooking, but for heating water and offering a meager source of warmth to those whose bodies are still chilled from the desert night. Around this fire, several men are sitting, backs against the wall, sharing a simple pipe. The smoke curls upward, thin and fragrant, dissipating quickly into the cool night air. They do not talk much, but the silence between them is comfortable, laced with the unspoken knowledge that they are all, for this night, united in their purpose, survival, and onward travel. This is the custom. Observe, participate steadily, and respect the quiet space of others. You too begin to participate, not with words, but with a respectful presence. You unfold a small blanket, a piece of worn but cherished wool, and spread it out, defining your own small territory. You sit for a moment, simply leaning back against the cool, rough stone of the wall. The wall seems to absorb the last vestiges of the desert heat, offering a grounding stability that you haven't felt in days. The sense of vulnerability that shadows you during travel, the constant need to be alert, to watch the horizon, to worry about brigands or sandstorms, is momentarily suspended. Here, under the protective gaze of the Khan, you are simply a fellow traveler, neither rich nor poor, merely human and exhausted. You realize the beauty of this egalitarian rest stop. Outside these walls, your social status, your cargo, and your origin might matter immensely. But here, the primary currency is simply tiredness, and everyone is equally wealthy in that regard. You close your eyes again, listening not just to the sounds, but through them, into the deeper, slower cadence of the resting community. You can pick out the gentle, rasping breathing of the camels, the occasional soft thump of a saddle being adjusted, the tiny scratch of a small desert creature scurrying across the packed earth. It is a lullaby composed of necessity and peaceful cohabitation, and you feel the last tight knots in your shoulders finally begin to release. The air grows cooler, hinting at the true depth of the desert chill, and you pull your blanket up to your chin, finding comfort in the simple, profound act of securing your own warmth and quiet. A soft, almost imperceptible shift in the ambient sound draws your attention from your quiet observations. A figure approaches, moving with a calm, purposeful tread that seems to displace the very air around him without disturbing the general peace. This is the Khansar, the keeper of the oasis and the inn, a man whose presence is a living embodiment of desert hospitality. He is older, his face etched with 1,000 lines that seem to trace the map of the roads you have just traveled, and his eyes hold a steady, deep wisdom that instantly puts you at ease. He wears simple, practical robes, but there is an undeniable dignity in his posture, the quiet authority of one who provides life in a land that constantly threatens to take it away. He doesn't speak immediately, simply offering a small, acknowledging nod, a universal greeting that needs no translation. He carries a small, brass tray holding 2 delicate, handleless ceramic cups and a tall, slender copper pot that emits a faint, herbaceous steam. He pauses before you, setting the tray down gently on the packed earth, the small clink of metal against ceramic, a sudden, intimate sound in the vast silence. He finally speaks, his voice a low, melodious rasp, like sand smoothed by the constant wind, offering words of welcome in a language that, miraculously, you understand, perhaps simply because his intent is so clear and kind. He tells you that your rest is precious, and that the first duty of the Khan is to replenish the body and the spirit. Without fanfare, he pours the liquid from the copper pot. It is a deep amber hue, and as it hits the cups, the fragrance intensifies. A complex blend of mint, cardamom, and perhaps something earthier, something grown only in these sheltered oasis gardens. This, he gestures, is the tea, the desert restorative, the ceremony that defines the hospitality of the Silk Road. You take the cup he offers, the ceramic warm and comforting against your cold hands. He motions for you to drink, but slowly, advising you to let the heat and the essences work their magic from the inside out. The first sip is transformative. It is intensely sweet, designed not just for flavor, but to replace the salt and sugar lost during the exhausting trek. Yet it is also surprisingly sharp, the mint cutting through the richness, acting as an instantaneous tonic to the system. You feel the warmth spread rapidly through your chest, reaching those deep, cold places that have been ignored for days. The Khansar settles on his heels beside you, not invading your space, but simply sharing the moment, the silence between you now rich with shared ritual. He explains, without asking for anything in return, that this tea is more than a drink. It is a philosophy. The sugar represents the unexpected sweetness of finding rest. The herbs are the knowledge passed down through generations, and the hot water is the life-giving stream of the oasis itself. You are not just drinking tea, you are accepting the spiritual contract of the caravan route, that you will be cared for, and that you must in turn care for others. He points out that every merchant, every pilgrim, every single exhausted soul that passes through this gate participates in this quiet ceremony. It levels the ground between the high-status diplomat and the humble camel driver. They all need this restorative warmth, this moment of shared vulnerability. You sip again, feeling a drowsiness that is heavy but welcome, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion finally being allowed to claim you. The Khansar watches you, his expression gentle, ensuring that the tea is accepted, the message received. He tells you very simply that tomorrow your journey will be easier because of this small shared moment tonight. He doesn't ask where you come from or where you are going. Your destination is irrelevant. Your immediate, absolute need for rest is the only thing that matters. He finishes his own tea, placing the cup back on the tray with a soft finality. He gathers the brass implements, his movements slow and deliberate, a master class in quiet purpose. The warmth of the tea still radiates through you, a soft internal sun that promises deep sleep. He gives you another small, respectful nod, a final acknowledgement of your shared humanity, and then moves away, his quiet footsteps fading back into the general hum of the courtyard. You are left alone again, but you are not lonely. You are newly warmed, protected, and honored by the profound hospitality of the desert. You place your empty cup down, feeling the heavy pull of sleep, a sleep that feels not like oblivion, but like profound healing. The profound sense of peace gifted by the Khansar's tea ceremony settles over you, allowing a natural, curious wakefulness to return before deep sleep claims you. You still feel delightfully heavy, but your mind, now hydrated and calmed, is eager to absorb the source of this miraculous sanctuary. A local man approaches your resting place, not the Khansar, but a younger, sturdy fellow who seems to be one of the permanent hands of the oasis, perhaps noticing your contemplative gaze toward the center of the courtyard. He silently gestures toward the well, indicating that this is the heart of the Khan, and by extension, the heart of the entire oasis. You follow him with a grateful nod, moving across the packed earth toward the towering circular stone structure of the wellhead. This is not a casual hole in the ground. It is a monument to necessity and engineering, a massive, ancient construction built of carefully fitted, smooth stones, worn shiny by centuries of ropes and hands. The stones are cool to the touch, retaining the night's chill, a contrast to the heat you still carry. He motions for you to peer over the low stone parapet. You look down, straining to see into the black depth. You can hear the echoing plunk of water far, far below, the sound traveling up the shaft like a whisper from the earth's core. He explains, in simple gestural language, interspersed with words you understand, words like deep, safe, and life, that this water source is not dependent on fickle rain, but taps into a massive, hidden underground river, a secret circulatory system flowing beneath the vast desert. He points out the complex yet elegantly simple mechanism for drawing the water, a massive wooden wheel, its axis thick and groaning slightly even now in its stillness, attached to a long braided hemp rope that disappears into the darkness. He indicates the careful maintenance involved, the regular relining of the well shaft with fresh stones, the need to keep the pulley mechanism oiled and strong. This maintenance is a generational duty, a sacred trust passed from father to son, because if the well fails, the oasis dies, and countless travelers will perish. You feel a profound, silent respect for the sheer effort invested here. This is not an accident of nature. It is a deliberate, ceaseless struggle against the consuming dryness of the desert. He dips a small leather bucket into the well, and with a trained, powerful pull, draws up a generous measure. As the bucket emerges, dripping and cool, the air around you fills with the scent of true, clean water, a smell that is utterly distinct from the salty, brackish taste you have sometimes encountered on the road. He offers you a fresh drink in a shared ladle, and the taste is startlingly pure, mineral-rich and cold, a shock of absolute freshness that cleanses the palate and the very back of your throat. You feel the deep physical satisfaction of knowing, for this moment, that you have access to uncompromised life. He explains the spiritual reverence surrounding this resource. The well is not just a utility, it is a sacred space. No one wastes water. Every drop is accounted for, every splash a minor offense against the desert's terrible hunger. Travelers are expected to take only what they need and to show respect by keeping the area around the well clean and orderly. There are small, almost invisible carved symbols on the stone lip of the well, ancient signs for protection and gratitude. He touches one with a reverent finger, indicating that the earth provides, but only if humanity acts as a responsible steward. He motions to the surrounding walls, explaining that the entire Khan is designed to maximize water collection, channeling even the slightest trace of condensation or rare rain into discrete cisterns, further supplementing the well's bounty. It is a masterpiece of sustainable ancient infrastructure. He gives you a final, insightful look, telling you that the desert teaches you the true value of things. You didn't appreciate water until you were miles from the nearest drop, just as you didn't appreciate rest until your body was truly spent. With this final, profound lesson about scarcity and survival, he smiles, a warm, genuine expression that crinkles the corners of his sun-darkened eyes, and excuses himself, leaving you standing beside the silent, throbbing heart of the oasis, feeling immensely humbled by the simple, enduring power of water. The tranquility of the well's presence seems to anchor the entire courtyard. But as you return to your resting spot, your attention is drawn to a different kind of commerce. The movement of goods that fuels the very existence of this road. Nearby, a man is meticulously checking the coverings of his numerous bales, ensuring their security against dust and accidental damage. He is mid-career, perhaps in his 40s, his movements efficient but weary, clearly carrying the weight of massive responsibility. He is what you might call a high-value merchant, one of the elite few entrusted with the most coveted commodity of the Silk Road, silk. You observe him for a time, watching as he gently unlatches a corner of a large, heavy bale, revealing the astonishing treasure within. The light from a nearby oil lamp catches the exposed edge, and you are struck by the textile's quality. It doesn't merely reflect light, it seems to hold it, rippling with an internal sheen that is utterly different from the dull wool and rough linen you've encountered elsewhere. The color is deep, rich indigo, so saturated that it looks almost wet. The merchant looks up, catching your gaze, but his expression is neither guarded nor suspicious. He offers the same weary, acknowledging nod that seems to be the universal currency of the Khan. Sensing your genuine, quiet interest, he motions for you to approach, his gesture inviting you to witness the marvel he carries, but also perhaps inviting you to share the burden of it. You walk over slowly and crouch beside him. He pulls back the protective covering a bit further, allowing you to run a single finger over the exposed fabric. The texture is breathtaking, cool, impossibly smooth and strong. It feels like captured moonlight. He whispers, his voice low, almost confidential, not because he fears eavesdroppers, but because the value of the goods commands hushed reverence. He tells you, without being asked, that this silk has traveled for months already, perhaps years, and its final destination is hundreds, maybe thousands of miles away. It will be cut into fine garments through royalty, or perhaps sold by the thread, to become the most delicate embroidery adorning the courts of the West. He shares a few reflective thoughts on this extraordinary commodity. He describes how the smallest change in temperature or humidity could ruin an entire bale, how one brush against a sharp rock could cause an irreparable tear, reducing vast wealth to worthless rags. He explains the intricate, labor-intensive process of its making, the thousands of silkworms, the careful unwinding of the cocoons, the dyeing process that uses rare and expensive pigments. He says that when he looks at the bales, he sees not just fabric, but thousands of hours of human labor, meticulous craftsmanship, and incredible risk. This silk, he emphasizes, is the reason for the road. It justifies the scorching heat you suffered, the lack of water, and the omnipresent threat of bandits. It is the perfect embodiment of portable wealth, light enough to transport across deserts, yet valuable enough to purchase kingdoms. He explains the paradox of the burden. While physically light, The weight of the silk is the crushing responsibility of its value. He sleeps less soundly than his fellow travelers because he carries an empire's ransom on the backs of his animals. He gently covers the exposed silk again, tucking the heavy woolen cloth back around it like a baby in a cradle. The act is one of both protection and deep, proprietary care. He tells you that his greatest wish for the night is simply for a few hours of dreamless sleep and a calm sunrise. His voice carries a touch of melancholy, the inherent sadness of a man perpetually tethered to an inanimate object of immense worth. He wishes you safe travels and better fortune than his own. You thank him for sharing his quiet wisdom, understanding that the value of the Silk Road is measured not just in gold or textiles, but in the exhaustion and dedication of men like him. You retreat back to your own space, your perception of the goods surrounding you now deepened by the knowledge of the human story behind every single bale. The weight of silk, you realize, is truly heavy. The shared intimacy of the Khan begins to draw you out of your isolated contemplation of the silk merchant's burden and toward the more immediate, comforting reality of sustenance. The scent of cooking has been a gentle presence since your arrival, a low, savory perfume that now seems to intensify, calling the weary travelers toward the center of the courtyard. You realize that you are now hungry, not with the gnawing pain of true starvation, but with the deep, honest hunger earned by honest travel. You move toward the stone hearth you noticed earlier, which has now become the epicenter of the communal meal. This is not a formal dining hall, but an open-air kitchen where the boundaries between cook, host, and guest are delightfully blurred. Several people are gathered, some preparing their own meager rations, others contributing to the larger shared pots. The atmosphere is one of focused, quiet cooperation, where everyone understands that the fastest way to get fed is to assist the process. You too feel the urge to contribute, to offer your presence and whatever small energy you have left. A local woman, perhaps the Khansar's wife or a close relative, is presiding over a large cast-iron pot suspended over the glowing embers. She is meticulously adding spices, her movements precise and ritualistic. You stand respectfully at the edge of the light, simply observing the art of the oasis cookfire. The ingredients are simple, dictated by the unforgiving environment: dried lentils, tough preserved meats perhaps acquired from a previous stop, handfuls of dried apricots for sweetness, and various grains that have been expertly stored. But it is the spices that perform the true alchemy. You watch as she takes a small wooden mortar and pestle and begins to grind coarse salt with flakes of dried chili and several peppercorns, releasing a sharp, invigorating scent. Then she adds a generous measure of cumin, earthy and warm, and a pinch of saffron, the tiny red threads instantly elevating the simple dish with a hint of floral luxury. These spices, she explains through gesture, are the Khan's treasure, often carried greater distances and valued almost as highly as the silk, because they transform mere necessity into true pleasure. You are invited to help with a humble task, kneading a simple dough for flatbread. The flour is coarser than you are used to, perhaps mixed with barley or millet, giving it a pleasing, rustic texture. You work the dough slowly, feeling its resilience under your hands, a therapeutic, grounding activity. As you work, you observe the other travelers. A stout, smiling man from the east is slicing cured sausage with a frighteningly sharp knife. A pair of travelers from the west are carefully cleaning a heap of wild onions they must have scavenged or traded for. When the stew is ready, the woman dips a ladle into the pot, and the resulting dish is rich, thick, and profoundly satisfying. The complex flavors, the saltiness of the meat, the warmth of the cumin, and the unexpected sweetness of the fruit create a perfect blend that speaks of both hardship and nourishment. This is survival cuisine at its finest. The flatbread, quickly cooked on the hot stones near the embers, is torn and shared, used to scoop up the stew. The shared nature of the meal is its deepest pleasure. Everyone eats together, cross-legged on the ground or perched on low stools. There are no tables, no rigid hierarchy. The act of eating side by side, dipping the bread into the same pot, is a powerful symbol of fellowship. For this brief, precious hour, the differences that separate the travelers, language, religion, destination, wealth, dissolve into the shared, fundamental reality of hunger and satisfaction. The atmosphere is peaceful and quiet, marked by the contented sighs of men and women finally fueling their bodies. The low light, the fragrant steam, and the rhythmic chewing create a powerful sense of community, a temporary family forged in the crucible of the desert. You feel your strength returning not just from the food, but from this profound human connection. You understand that this communal meal is a vital part of the oasis's medicine, healing the traveler's soul as much as their body. With the warmth of the shared meal settling comfortably in your stomach and the gentle haze of the desert tea still lingering in your mind, your attention is naturally drawn upwards, away from the immediate concerns of the courtyard. The desert night sky, now fully dark, is a spectacle of such dazzling clarity that it demands reverence. It is a canvas so vast and unpolluted by city lights that the stars appear to be spilling out of the blackness, countless pinpricks of icy fire. You notice an older man, cloaked against the deepening chill, standing away from the central activity, his gaze fixed upward. This is the desert astrologer, or navigator. Though he carries no elaborate instruments, only the accumulated wisdom of a lifetime spent under this infinite roof. He gestures for you to join him, offering a quiet invitation to share his celestial viewing. As you stand beside him, he begins to speak, his voice a dry murmur that seems perfectly suited to the desert air, telling the ancient stories etched in light above. He points, not at individual stars, but at patterns, connecting the bright points into shapes that are instantly meaningful to the traveler. He indicates the great, sweeping arc of the Milky Way, describing it as the river of souls, the path that guides both the living and the dead across the void. He explains the essential role of the night sky as the sole trustworthy compass for those who travel beyond sight of any landmark. He doesn't rely on complex mathematics. His knowledge is practical, born of observation. He shows you how to find the pole star, or al-Rukaba, the steadfast point around which the entire celestial dome appears to turn. This star, he says, is the anchor of the night, the one constant that always tells you true north, regardless of which way the capricious dunes shift beneath you. You fix your eyes on it, feeling an immediate, reassuring sense of stability. He then points out various constellations, the familiar celestial animals and heroes recognized by cultures across the vast landmass, though perhaps bearing different names here. He describes the path of the planets, telling you how to distinguish them from the fixed stars by their slightly steadier light and their slow, predictable wandering. He explains that these movements are not just beautiful, they are a calendar, a clock, and a weather prediction system all in one. The way the moon sits in relation to certain clusters can foretell a change in the desert winds, or perhaps even the coming of a rare, precious mist. You learn that to be a successful desert traveler is to be an amateur astronomer, forced into intimacy with the celestial sphere. You must know the exact time of the moonrise to determine your traveling schedule, and you must understand the changing position of the constellations to confirm your latitude. The desert strips away the noise of civilization and forces you to confront the primary cosmic rhythms. He shares a small philosophical observation. During the day, the sun is a brutal, blinding master, demanding sweat and pain. But at night, the stars are gentle, patient guides, offering direction and quiet company. He emphasizes that the silence of the desert night is not empty. It is filled with the silent, constant communication of the universe. As he speaks, his finger traces the outline of a specific constellation, perhaps the Great Bear, or what he calls the caravan. He explains that knowing this pattern allows a traveler to correct their bearing hour by hour, ensuring that even a slight deviation caused by soft sand or a tired camel is quickly rectified. The stars, he concludes, are the ancestors of the Silk Road, having guided millions of caravans across the centuries. He finishes his instruction with a profound final piece of advice. Trust the light that comes from the farthest places, for it is the oldest, most reliable truth you will find here. He then smiles, a warm, knowing expression, and quietly retreats to his own medication, leaving you under the massive, silent expanse, feeling smaller, yet infinitely more connected to the timeless navigating history of the desert. The wisdom of the desert astrologer settles into your bones alongside the satisfying warmth of the evening meal. You return to your resting place, now viewing the night not just as a blanket of darkness, but as a complex, meticulously charted map, offering silent reassurance. You settle down fully, pulling the blanket around you, deliberately focusing on the soundscape of rest within the khan. The initial bustle has completely faded. The courtyard is now immersed in a deep, textured silence, a silence that is alive rather than empty. It is a tapestry woven from very specific, gentle sounds that define the peacefulness of a resting caravan. The most dominant and comforting sound is the low, rhythmic rumbles of contented camels. These magnificent animals, having been unloaded and fed, are now in their deepest rest. They emit soft, breathy snorts and long, slow exhalations, punctuated by the occasional low gurgle or groan. The unique liquid sounds of their enormous digestive systems processing their hard-won meal. These sounds are deeply reassuring. They are the sounds of strength restored, of the desert's engines powering down. You listen for the human contribution to this quiet symphony. It is composed mainly of the soft murmurings of sleep. There is the gentle, steady breathing of the travelers around you, some deep and regular, others light and shallow. Occasionally, a person shifts position on their mat, the faint rustle of cloth against straw, or the soft thud of a limb being adjusted. Someone might cough lightly or sigh deeply in a moment of unconscious release, but these sounds are quickly swallowed by the surrounding silence, like drops of water absorbed by sand. You distinguish the distinct sounds that are unique to this environment. The massive, thick stone walls of the khan create an incredible acoustic dampening effect, muting the wind that you can still hear faintly whistling over the parapets high above. This interior stillness is a deliberate design, protecting the precious resource of sleep. You hear the faint, high-pitched skitter of a mouse or some other small desert creature moving along the stone baseboard, quickly followed by the soft padding of a resident cat, a silent guardian of the provisions. Even the objects of travel seem to participate in the quiet. The leather saddles and wooden pack frames piled neatly near the walls might creak softly as the night air cools and the materials contract. The chain securing the camels, though slackened for rest, might clink once or twice as an animal shifts its weight. These are not disturbances, they are confirmations, proof that you are surrounded by life, by security, and by the shared profound act of respite. You find yourself practicing an old traveler's trick, one you may have picked up on the long road, listening for the sounds that aren't there. There is no panicked shout, no sudden alarm, no rhythmic tramp of unseen footsteps, signs that the outside world, with its threats and its demands, has been successfully excluded for the night. The absence of these sounds is the true measure of the oasis's protection. You let your awareness soften, dissolving the boundaries between yourself and the resting caravan. You are simply a part of this collective lullaby, a thread in this temporary fabric of peace. The exhaustion you felt upon arrival returns now, but transformed. It is no longer a painful burden, but a gentle, heavy hand guiding you toward profound rest. The camels are breathing slowly, the merchant is finally free of the weight of the silk, the khansar is asleep in his own quarters. Everyone is held in this collective safety. You sink deeper onto your mat, feeling the cool earth beneath the straw, feeling the weight of your own eyelids, and accepting the sweet release of this well-earned restorative sleep. The soft, gentle sounds are the final assurance. Everything is still. Everything is safe. Everything is resting. Your deep, restorative sleep is a beautiful, necessary void, but it is not destined to last the entire night undisturbed. Just as you reach the deepest, most rejuvenating point of slumber, a sudden, subtle change in the air quality and the ambient sound penetrates your consciousness, pulling you back toward the waking world. It is not a violent disruption, but a creeping, insidious alteration of the environment. First, you notice the air. It shifts from the cool, crisp clarity of the desert night to a sudden dry warmth, carrying a strange metallic scent, sharp and dusty. Then comes the sound, not the gentle rhythmic noises of the resting camp, but a low, growing, distant hiss, like a massive, invisible entity approaching slowly but relentlessly. You push yourself up onto your elbows, instantly alert, and look toward the open courtyard, where a moment ago the stars were brilliant. The celestial view has been subtly, terrifyingly obscured. The blackness is no longer pure. There is a sudden distant reddish haze clinging to the horizon, low to the ground. It is an unnatural color, the sun's influence refracted through a monumental cloud of particulate matter. This color, you instantly know, is the signature of a severe desert event. The hiss you heard is quickly escalating into a sustained, low-frequency rumble, a sound that vibrates in the chest rather than the ears, signaling the approach of a significant sandstorm. there is a palpable, shared anxiety that instantly sweeps through the con. It is not panic, but a deep, instinctive recognition of danger shared by everyone who lives or travels in this unforgiving landscape. You see others beginning to stir, rising swiftly and silently from their mats. The camels, those usually stoic creatures, are already sensing the danger. They shift nervously, their low groans becoming sharp, anxious cries, sensing the vibrational change in the earth before humans do. Their handlers are already moving toward them, speaking in hushed, urgent tones, covering their heads and eyes with thick cloth to prepare them for the onslaught. The Kansar, who you had last seen retiring peacefully, is already in the courtyard, moving with an impressive, focused energy. He does not shout or command, but his presence itself is a directive. His face, usually so calm, is stern with the seriousness of the threat. He points toward the haze and then to the shelter of the Khan's upper galleries and storage rooms, indicating that all loose goods must be secured immediately. The wind, which had been a faint, cool breeze, now hits the massive walls in a short, sharp gust, carrying a few handfuls of fine, abrasive grit. This is the first scout, the advance warning. The air pressure seems to drop, creating a profound, heavy feeling in the atmosphere. You feel the grit catch in your throat, a tiny, annoying prelude to the dust you are about to face. This is a looming threat that unites the entire motley population of the Khan. All business, rest, and sleep are instantly suspended. The merchant who carried the silk is scrambling, his face a mask of worry, as he swiftly begins to bundle his precious cargo even tighter, knowing that the finest particles of dust can penetrate even the thickest coverings. The pilgrims are collecting their small bundles, hurrying them indoors. The Kansar catches your eye, and though he doesn't speak a single word of your language, his meaning is clear. Move, secure your belongings, and find the safest shelter. The danger is not distant anymore. The rumble is growing into a roar, and the reddish-brown wall of dust is beginning to swallow the distant horizon, rolling toward the oasis with a terrifying, unified momentum. The precious moments of rest are over, replaced by the intense, coordinated urgency of survival. The arrival of the sandstorm's harbingers has shattered the peaceful rhythm of the night, replacing it with the urgent, highly focused energy of preparation. The looming reddish-brown haze demands immediate action, and the years of experience etched onto the faces of the oasis dwellers and seasoned travelers now translate into a rapid, coordinated response. There is no confusion, only an efficient, almost silent mobilization under the calm direction of the Kansar. The first priority is the camels and the most vulnerable cargo. You watch as handlers, moving with surprising speed and strength, guide the enormous animals into sheltered interior stables, rooms built deep into the thick walls of the Khan. They cover the camels' heads and muzzles with thick, heavy fabric, protecting the beasts' sensitive lungs and eyes from the fine, suffocating dust. The animals resist briefly, their anxiety high, but they soon submit to the familiar, reassuring touch of their caregivers. Your own immediate concern is your small pack. Following the lead of the other travelers, you take your gear and quickly relocate to one of the upper galleries that line the perimeter of the courtyard. These galleries are more enclosed than the open ground floor, offering better protection from the lateral force of the wind and the driven sand. You notice small alcove-like rooms along the upper level, temporary sleeping chambers usually reserved for wealthier travelers, and you push your way into a small, sturdy space with several others, pulling your pack in after you. The securing of goods becomes an impressive shared effort. The merchant carrying the silk, now sweating slightly in the dry heat, is not left to struggle alone. Several other travelers, even rivals from different trading groups, pitch in without a word. They carefully lift the massive, precious bales, dragging them away from any exposed window or door crack, stacking them in the most sheltered inner storage rooms. This is the unwritten law of the road. In the face of a shared elemental threat, wealth and rivalry are forgotten. Only mutual survival matters. You see the silk merchant nod deeply to a man he was arguing with just yesterday about tariffs, a gesture that speaks louder than any treaty. The Khansar, meanwhile, is focused on the structural integrity of the entire complex. He's moving from door to heavy door, ensuring that the enormous, thick wooden barriers are latched and barred. You hear the deep, reassuring thud of heavy timbers being dropped into place across the main gate and the secondary service entries. These doors are not simple planks. They are designed to withstand the persistent, crushing force of the desert's fury. You notice him carrying small quantities of wet, coarse clay. He moves quickly, sealing any visible cracks or seams around the window shutters and doors with this mud, creating an airtight seal against the elemental fury. You watch him work, his movements economical and practiced, and you follow suit in your own small shelter, using a damp rag and dust to plug the tiny gap beneath the wooden shutters. As the roar outside grows from a rumble to a continuous deep bass drone, signaling the storm's imminent arrival, the last travelers scurry into the prepared shelters. The light in the courtyard dims dramatically, not because the sun is gone, but because the sky is now choked with the rolling brown dust cloud. The air inside the gallery becomes tense, expectant, thick with the smell of dry clay and anxiety. You can hear the initial powerful slap of the first major gusts hitting the stone walls, a sound of massive force meeting immovable object. Everyone is now inside, huddled against the massive, thick walls of the Khan, waiting. The last glimpse you have of the courtyard before the final, heavy door to your gallery is pulled shut is the sight of the packed earth floor, now already dusted with a thin, unsettling layer of fine red grit. The preparation is complete. The fortress is sealed. All that remains is the tense, shared waiting. The heavy timber door to the gallery slides into its final secure position, plunging the small room into a profound, almost absolute darkness, broken only by the thin, occasional sliver of light where the Khansar's clay seal hasn't entirely taken. This sudden encapsulation marks the beginning of the waiting out the storm. Outside, the full, terrifying power of the sandstorm breaks over the oasis. The noise is immediately overwhelming. It is no longer a rumble or a roar, but a continuous, high-decibel shriek, the sound of countless millions of grains of sand being driven against the thick stone walls at incredible velocity. It sounds like 1,000 blacksmiths hammering on metal plates, interspersed with the deeper, terrifying whoosh and thump of massive wind gusts, attempting to tear the structure apart. You can feel the sheer force of the wind vibrating through the very foundation of the building, a low-frequency hum that travels up through your feet and into your chest, a feeling of deep elemental pressure. Inside the indoor sanctuary, the atmosphere is one of profound, tense silence among the travelers. The external chaos commands all attention. No one speaks, no one dares to break the spell of the storm's powerful presence. Everyone is huddled close to the center of the room, instinctively seeking the most stable point away from the shutters and the heavy door. You are acutely aware of the bodies around you, the silent, shared breathing of dozens of people, all unified by this temporary, fragile moment of shelter. You sit pressed against the cool, rough stone of the inner wall, using its immense thickness as your ultimate reassurance. The stone itself seems to sigh under the relentless assault, but it holds fast, a testament to the ancient builders who understood the desert's violence intimately. You realize that without this structure, this massive, well-maintained rock sanctuary, survival would be impossible. The air is slightly stale, warm from the huddled bodies, and carries a faint, persistent scent of dry dust that has inevitably infiltrated the small cracks. As the storm rages, the sensory deprivation is almost complete. You cannot see, and the noise is so immense it blurs into a single, overwhelming sensation. Yet within this chaos, you find an unexpected, profound sense of intimate sanctuary. You are sharing a moment of true, shared vulnerability with the others. The fact that the merchant's silk and your own humble possessions are stored just a few feet away, equally threatened by the same force, creates a strange, binding connection. The storm has stripped away all the usual barriers, leaving only the fundamental reality of being human, together, facing a world that wants to consume you. Hours pass in this suspended reality, marked only by the shifting intensity of the roar outside. Sometimes the wind will spike, rattling the heavy door so violently that everyone in the room instinctively tenses, waiting for a crack or a break. Then, just as suddenly, it will dip into a slightly lower drone, offering a momentary, misleading sense of relief before surging back into a ferocious screech. You think back to the Consar's tea ceremony and the desert astrologer's quiet lessons. All that wisdom, all the careful planning, all the strength of the camels, it all comes down to the integrity of these simple, sturdy walls. This temporary world inside the storm is a masterclass in humility. You cannot fight this power, you can only shelter from it, and wait for its eventual, inevitable exhaustion. You close your eyes, letting the deafening roar become a strange, high-volume white noise, and find a peculiar, resigned peace in the knowledge that you have done everything you can. Now, you simply entrust your safety to the ancient stones of the oasis. The deep, resonant roar that has been the singular focus of your existence for what feels like an eternity begins, imperceptibly at first, to abate. It is a slow, gradual tapering, not a sudden cessation, allowing your hyper-alert senses to register the change with profound relief. The high-pitched shriek of the wind gradually lowers in frequency, transforming back into a continuous heavy drone, and eventually a weary, low hiss. Just before dawn, the post-storm silence descends. This silence is not the ordinary quiet of the night. It is a deep, profound, almost unnerving stillness, the world holding its breath after an immense exertion. It feels temporary, delicate, as if the desert itself is exhausted. Inside your sheltered space, the shift is transformative. The oppressive noise fades, and suddenly you can hear the ordinary sounds again. The faint, unsteady breathing of your fellow travelers, the soft shifting of materials, and the low, anxious whines of the camels from their inner stables. The Khansar, who had been standing guard by the door, moves immediately, his actions speaking volumes. He begins to unbar the heavy timber, a process that involves the loud, satisfying clunk of wood against stone. When the door is finally slid open, a pale, filtered light floods into the room. The air that rushes in is cool, damp, and smells strongly of wet sand and ozone, the distinctive cleansing scent that follows a major elemental event. You emerge into the courtyard and are greeted by a landscape of utter stillness, draped in a strange, uniform coat. Everything is coated in a thick, fine, rust-colored powder, the dust of the storm. It has infiltrated everywhere. It lies in drifts against the base of the walls, completely covering the straw mats and turning the entire courtyard floor into a smooth, unsettling canvas of red-brown. Even the stone surfaces and the walls of the khan are now the color of the desert itself. The morning rituals begin instantly and without command. This is the second unwritten law of the oasis. After a storm, you clean. The Khansar distributes wide, simple brooms made of tied-up reeds, and everyone, without exception, joins the quiet, unified task of sweeping. The work is physically demanding, but deeply therapeutic. The goal is to clear the finest, most pervasive dust, the kind that irritates lungs and ruins cargo, from the sheltered spaces, preparing the grounds for the immediate work of departure. You join the line of sweepers, moving in unison, pushing the fine powder into large piles that will later be carried outside the walls. You work alongside the merchant whose silk was threatened, the pilgrim family, and the various camel handlers. The shared labor is a quiet, powerful bond. There are no complaints, no grumbling, only the rhythmic swish and scrape of the brooms, creating a new, soft soundscape of restoration. As you work, you notice the subtle damage. A few stray roof tiles have been dislodged, a piece of canvas covering a water trough has been shredded, and the heavy leather thongs of a saddle have been chafed raw in one spot. These are minor injuries, quickly assessed and noted for repair, proving the strength of the khan. The relief of having survived is mixed with the determined focus on recovery. The sun finally manages to break through the lingering atmospheric haze, casting a soft, diffuse light onto the dust-covered courtyard. The air is still, and for the first time since your arrival, the oasis feels utterly silent and exposed, yet profoundly secure. The shared immediate necessity of sweeping away the dust has replaced the shared anxiety of waiting, completing the cycle of community response. You look at the piles of fine red dust and feel a strange mixture of respect and exhaustion. Respect for the sheer power of the desert, and exhaustion from fighting against it. The oasis is wounded, but it is standing, and now it is being meticulously healed by the collective hands of its temporary inhabitants. With the bulk of the post-storm cleanup complete, the rhythmic sweeping gives way to a new, energized phase: departure preparations. The sun is now fully up, though still slightly dimmed by the dust lingering in the high atmosphere, casting a warm, slightly amber light over the restored courtyard. The khan is rapidly transforming from a sanctuary of rest into a bustling hub of onward movement. The shared struggle against the storm has created a temporary, deep camaraderie that now manifests in acts of quiet, appreciative exchange. Camel handlers lead their animals out of the inner stables, dusting them down with thick brushes. The camels, surprisingly clean beneath their coverings, seem eager to move, sensing the impending journey. You watch as loads are painstakingly checked and relashed. The merchant who carried the silk is carefully examining every inch of the woolen coverings, running his hands over the rope knots, his earlier anxiety replaced by a grim determination. This phase is characterized by a wave of subtle, respectful trade and gifting, the kindness of exchange. Travelers who were sheltered together now engage in small, beneficial transactions. You see a man from the West trade a small, carefully preserved piece of leather to a local oasis worker in exchange for a handful of dried dates, a rare, nutritious treat. The currency is not always silver. Sometimes it is simply gratitude and necessity. The cook, the woman who presided over the communal meal, now moves among the departing groups, handing out small, tightly wrapped parcels of flatbread and dried meat, provisions for the first leg of their journeys, a final, tangible act of the oasis hospitality. She accepts no money, only nods of profound thanks, gestures of respect for her kindness and the sustenance she provided during the crisis. You observe an interesting exchange between the silk merchant and one of the camel drivers who helped him secure his bales during the worst of the wind. The merchant does not offer coin. Instead, he carefully unwraps a tiny, hidden inner layer of a parcel, revealing not silk, but a small, polished piece of agate, a semi-precious stone often used as a protective talisman. He presses it into the driver's hand, a silent acknowledgement of the shared peril and the valuable assistance rendered. The driver accepts it with a slight bow, knowing the gift represents not a payment, but a deeper, more meaningful expression of thanks and shared history. Your own preparations are swift. You refill your water skins at the well, pausing to silently thank the sturdy wellhead for its life-saving abundance, remembering the guide's lesson about reverence for the water source. Remember the spiritual reverence for the ancient wells from Section 4. You cinch your pack tightly, feeling the reassuring weight of your few belongings, now slightly cleaner than they were when you arrived. As you look around, you realize that the energy is high but not rushed. Everyone understands the desert timetable. Travel must begin early, before the sun reaches its full midday ferocity. The atmosphere is bittersweet, a mixture of deep relief at having survived the storm, gratitude for the sanctuary, and the inevitable, slightly apprehensive pull of the unknown road ahead. You spend a moment watching a large contingent of travelers from a distant land prepare their animals. They perform a brief, quiet ritual, scattering a few grains of sand from the oasis soil onto the first stretch of the packed earth outside the gate, a symbolic act of carrying the strength of the oasis with them. You feel a pull to do something similar, a small, silent acknowledgement of the life-saving temporary home you are about to leave. The sheer, vibrant humanity of this place, the shared food, the quiet watchfulness, and the immediate cooperation against the storm has been as restorative as the sleep itself. The courtyard, already cleared of the storm's detritus, stands ready to receive the next wave of exhausted arrivals, its sturdy walls gleaming slightly in the morning light, patiently awaiting its next role as sanctuary. Your final moments within the protective walls of the Khan are marked by a deep sense of reflective gratitude. You have secured your belongings, watched the farewell exchanges, and feel ready to face the road again, strengthened by rest and camaraderie. Just as you move toward the main gate, where the heavy bars have been partially lifted, the Khansar approaches you. He moves with his characteristic quiet dignity, his face showing the fatigue of a sleepless, storm-tossed night, yet his eyes remain clear and warm. He doesn't offer a lengthy speech, but a few final words of wisdom, spoken in that low, melodic voice you remember from the tea ceremony. He speaks not just as an innkeeper, but as a guardian of the road, someone who has seen generations of travelers pass through his gates. He tells you that the true wealth of the Silk Road is not the silk, the spices, or the silver, but the knowledge that when the elemental world turns against you, human kindness and foresight, the sturdy walls, the deep well, the shared fire, will always remain. He then reaches into the inner pocket of his robe and draws out a small, carefully folded piece of tough, dried animal skin, a parchment fragment. This is his gift of guidance. He unfolds it gently, revealing a meticulously drawn section of a map. It is not a map of the famous, well-traveled highway, but a detailed, almost microscopic rendering of a specific, tricky stretch of the path ahead, perhaps a place where the dunes are particularly treacherous, or where a certain small, hidden cluster of rocks can confuse even a seasoned eye. He traces the line with a calloused finger, pointing out a small, seemingly insignificant detour that is known only to the locals and trusted travelers. This detour, he explains, will save you a day's travel by bypassing a heavily eroded section that has grown especially difficult since the recent storm. He emphasizes that the map itself is less important than the ability to read the land, a skill that requires patience, humility, and acute observation, the same qualities needed to survive the night under the stars as the astrologer taught you. Remember the desert astrologer from section 7. He looks at you deeply, offering the desert's lasting lesson. Trust the small, quiet signs. He advises you to pay attention to the flight path of the desert birds, to the way the sand grains settle differently on the north side of the dunes, and to the faint, lingering scent of water even where none is visible. The desert is a harsh teacher, but it is also one that offers subtle clues to those who respect its power. He tells you that the greatest mistake a traveler can make is to become arrogant or complacent after a short run of good luck. The road demands constant alertness, even, perhaps especially, after a good night's rest. He gives you the fragment, urging you to memorize it, and then, respectfully, to let it return to the earth, as he implies written knowledge is secondary to remembered wisdom. The gift is a priceless asset, a piece of knowledge that carries the weight of many lives and much learned experience. You receive it with a sincere nod, acknowledging the deep faith and trust he places in you by sharing such localized, vital information. He offers a final, gentle farewell, a simple prayer for your swift and safe journey, and then steps back, melting once again into the background of the Khan. This last, quiet act of profound generosity completes your experience here, leaving you with a sense of being both a solitary traveler and a cherished part of a vast ancient network of human connection. You turn toward the open gate, the weight of your pack feeling lighter, weighted instead by the kindness and wisdom you have collected at this dust-worn, life-giving oasis. You are ready to step back onto the great, relentless Silk Road. The time for departure has arrived. The huge, heavy gate of the Khan, which felt like the immovable barrier against the fury of the storm just hours ago, is now fully opened, revealing the endless, pale expanse of the desert morning. The air outside is crisp, clean after the purging wind, and intensely still. You take a final, deep breath of the air within the walls, inhaling the sense of earth, tea, spices, and safety before stepping across the threshold. You quietly leave the oasis at sunrise. The soft golden light of the early sun is slanting low across the packed earth, catching the swirling remnants of the fine red dust that the brooms could not capture. Ahead of you, the Silk Road stretches out, not as a paved road, but as a series of countless tracks carved over millennia by the hooves of camels and the worn soles of travelers. The vastness of the landscape immediately reasserts itself, humbling and immense, making the thick walls of the Khan behind you look suddenly small and temporary. You do not look back for long. The essence of the oasis, the restorative power of the water, the profound hospitality of the Khansar, the shared vulnerability during the storm, and the quiet wisdom of the astrologer is not left behind. It is carried within you. You feel a profound sense of restorative peace anchored in your core. The ache of your muscles is gone, replaced by a steady, coiled energy, and the weariness of your spirit has been replaced by a quiet, determined hope. You fall into step with a small group of other travelers, maintaining the silent etiquette of the road. There is no need for conversation. The shared experience of the past night, the knowledge of the looming sandstorm, which you survived, not like that cheeky introduction suggested, and the collective relief of a new, clean day binds you more strongly than words ever could. You are all heading east or west, following the thread of trade and curiosity that links the distant corners of the world. As you walk, you note the landscape with a newfound clarity, applying the Khansar's final lesson. You look for the subtle differences in the way the morning light defines the dunes, seeking the firmer, packed earth, remembering the map fragment he gave you. You realize that your time at the oasis was not merely a pause in your journey, but a fundamental recalibration. The desert, you now understand, is not an enemy to be conquered, but a colossal, indifferent presence to be respected and navigated with meticulous care and the strength of a collective spirit. You look down at your hands, remembering the feeling of the rough stone of the well, the smooth warmth of the teacup, and the coarse texture of the flatbread dough. These simple, physical memories are the most valuable treasures you carry. They are tangible proof that even in the most desolate, dangerous landscapes, humanity has found ways to create pockets of warmth, safety, and extraordinary kindness. The human connection you experienced, the quiet solidarity during the storm, the unasked-for help, and the shared communal meal is the true, enduring heart of the Silk Road, the invisible thread that keeps the whole magnificent, dangerous enterprise alive. You move forward, your shadow stretching long before you on the pale sand, ready to face the long, challenging journey ahead, carrying the oasis as a quiet, powerful blueprint for survival. The road unfolds, endless and challenging, but for the first time in a long time, you feel completely ready to meet it. Now you are moving further away from the Khan. The sturdy, dark walls that promised so much security are receding into the shimmering distance, becoming just another small, low mound on the horizon, soon to be swallowed by the vastness of the desert. Let the light of the morning soften around you, gently blurring the sharp lines of the sand and the sky. You can let the focus on the road start to fade now, letting your eyes relax, letting your mind stop its vigilant watch. The warmth of the sun is a promise, not a threat. You are not walking anymore. You are simply drifting on the gentle, silent current of the air. Feel the softness return to your eyelids, the heaviness to your limbs, a comfortable, slow weight pulling you down toward rest. Remember the sound of the contented camels chewing their cud, the lowest, slowest rhythm of survival and peace. Feel the quiet stability of the earth beneath your feet, no longer a challenge, but a support. You have made it through the night and through the storm. You have been sheltered and replenished. All the worries, the tasks, the demands of the waking world, they are receding, just like the walls of the oasis. Let go of the map. Let go of the next destination. Let go of the weight of the silk, the sound of the wind, and the lingering scent of dust. Settle into the profound sense of safety and well-being. You are simply held in this moment, protected, warm, and utterly at peace. Let your breathing slow, deep and even, matching the slow, patient pulse of the desert night. There is nothing left to do now but sleep. You are safe. You are well. Rest now, dear traveler. End of story. Sweet dreams.